Super Mario Odyssey was an incredible game with a large amount of content to explore and to experience. So many amazing worlds, enemies, and concepts were implemented into this game that just leaves fans clamoring for a sequel so that they could get another experience as enjoyable as the one that they had with the first game. And from Nintendo's perspective, yeah, Odyssey is the highest selling game on the Switch, so they'd probably want to do a sequel to this game. And if this ends up actually being a thing, what features would I like to be included into it? As evidenced by the title of this video, in this one I'm going to be listing 10 features that I'd like to be included into the game, and I strongly encourage you to leave features that you want to be included in a potential Odyssey sequel in the comment section down below. I really like reading your comments, so I'm going to be interested in what you guys come up with here. So with the intro out of the way, let's hop right into what I'd like to see in this new game. The first thing that I'd like to see in a potential Odyssey 2 is a co-op mode. This would probably be done with Luigi, and I really think that this would work out well in this form of a game. As many of you are aware of, we do actually have co-op in Super Mario Odyssey, but it only involves one player controlling Mario and one player controlling Cappy. This is not the type of co-op that I want. As I mentioned, I'd like 2 individual players to be able to experience this game, utilizing the full array of features, meaning that one person plays as both Mario and the Cap, and then Luigi could have some form of Cappy, or you can make the second player Princess Peach and then give her Tiara, for instance. Any way to make it so that you have 2 people both playing with the complete array of features at the same time and exploring the world together. I get that Odyssey is sort of meant to be a solo experience, but I think this could work out well if you make these couple of changes. The first thing that would have to be changed is the camera angle, considering that in the original Mario Odyssey it's completely fixed on Mario, so you'd have to probably broaden it a little bit so that you get a wider area of the world that you're exploring, and that way you could have 2 people roam freely throughout that world. Maybe you'll have to force it so that they don't get too far apart, but since it's about exploration and it'll probably be a local only thing because that's what Nintendo likes to do, then the players will probably just negotiate it anyway, and that shouldn't be too much of an issue. You could even make the second player have the exact same abilities as Mario. I don't care. I just think it would be really fun to experience this type of game with 2 players. I definitely don't think a 4-player co-op mode would work like in 3D World, because it's not that type of game and it's not a linear level based system. It's more of an open world style Mario game. In terms of boss fights and some other stuff that would really only work with 1 player, maybe you wouldn't be able to implement it in there and you'll have to suspend the second player for a little while, but I think it'd be fine to have it for the majority of the game anyway. Moving on, I would like to see the return in an Odyssey 2 of some familiar enemies from the past that weren't included in Odyssey 1. Examples of these enemies include guys such as the Boos, Bob-ombs, Pokies, and even enemies like Shy Guys. All 4 of those examples, and I know there are many more and I can't get to all of them in this video, but those examples I could see all being implemented in a way where you could capture them and they could have unique abilities. Take the Pokey for example, where you could capture it and then take the ball off of its head and roll around on it a little bit, and then try to roll over other enemies as you do so. Just seeing more guys that are familiar from the past would make this a more enjoyable experience and give you some more feelings of nostalgia while playing through this game, as if all the hints towards Mario 64 and all that wasn't enough. Speaking of Mario 64, the third feature that I'd like to be included in this game are some worlds based off of worlds from the past. I'm talking things like Bob-omb Battlefield from Mario 64, Isle Delfino, which I made an entire video on as it may have actually been planned to be included in Odyssey. And some of the larger galaxies from the 2 Galaxy games would be interesting to implement, definitely not the smaller ones because you're trying to go for a more open world vibe here, but any of the larger galaxies with a lot of things to do in them, and maybe you could add a couple more if you want. Those would just be really fun to implement. Again, giving you a nice feeling of nostalgia, and more of the people that would be buying Odyssey 2 are probably more hardcore Mario fans, and people who are just wanting more from their original Odyssey experience. If you're just a casual consumer, maybe you'll only buy one of the 2 and you'll likely just buy the first one and not the sequel. So with the second one, you could definitely add much more stuff that would be enticing to a hardcore Mario fanbase. The next feature, or I shouldn't even really call it a feature, and it's kind of the wavy one on this list, it's more of the removal of something that I don't like, and just changing it around a little bit, an alteration if you will. This is the removal of moons that are out in the open and the large amount of moons that can be bought within Super Mario Odyssey. I didn't really care for it when they were marketing the game as having 999 moons to find within it. It artificially makes it seem like there's more content in the game than there actually is. As I prefaced in the beginning of this video, I love the content in Super Mario Odyssey, and it's one of my favorite Mario games. It's an incredible experience, but there are many moons that are just lying there out in the open with no real challenge to get them, and therefore many moons don't feel rewarding because of this. This is especially apparent when you could just go to a shop and buy a bunch of moons in the Mushroom Kingdom just to pad out the number to 999. It would actually be very impressive if you had half that number of moons within the game that were completely original challenges that were kind of difficult to obtain. Now, I understand the reason for this. You kind of wanted Odyssey to be a game where you could just pick up and play, get a couple of moons, and then take a break from it for a little while. But as somebody who would like to play the game for a couple hours at a time, that's not really the type of format that I personally would like for a Mario game. At least a Mario game in the open world style. For the 2D games and the linear 3D ones, I could totally see that making sense. Maybe I just want to play a couple of levels and just be done with it for a little while. But for Odyssey, I like to explore for a long time. And because of that, I want more in-depth missions. Why do I get the exact same reward when I do a complicated Herculean task to get a moon, and then I just get the exact same thing when I ground pound a random tile? This is something that I really want fixed for a sequel. The next new feature I want are some challenge modes implemented into the game. This could be like a menu where you pick a challenge, such as captures only lasting for a short time, one-hit deaths, a thing where you cannot touch any coins, and one where you must get a set amount of moons in a certain amount of time, and so on. There are so many ideas that you can implement here. And completing these challenges could get you a reward. It could be a multi-moon or something like that, but I think it'd be very interesting, and it goes back to the hardcore thing that I was talking about before. Obviously, there are going to be some casual players that pick up this game. It's a Mario after all, okay? You have to keep in mind the fan base that you're targeting here. But there's going to be lots of people who are looking for a difficult challenge within this game. I'm not looking for a difficult challenge all the time, but sometimes, just to spice it up a little bit, I'll try to go for it. But having them programmed into the game would be very interesting. The next thing I'd like is an expanded Mushroom Kingdom within the game. What I mean by this is that it kind of disappointed me where in the original Mario Odyssey, the Mushroom Kingdom was just really Peach's Castle and some area that surrounded that, and I kind of wanted more. If you believe that the majority of the Mario games that you go through are experienced in the Mushroom Kingdom alone, and Odyssey is offering multiple other worlds, you'd expect more stuff from the Mushroom Kingdom to be included in the Mushroom Kingdom world in the game. Not just Peach's Castle, which is very nice and provided me with a lot of nostalgia from one of my favorite video games of all time, but I would appreciate some other types of levels and missions implemented into this kingdom. If there's one that I could definitely say is a lock to return for the next one, it's the Mushroom Kingdom, because it's the most established kingdom in the entire Mario series, and that's why it would make sense to be included in the sequel to Mario Odyssey. But when this happens, I'd like to see some references to other games being implemented into it, and some challenges that you'd see in a game like 3D World, or even a new Super Mario Bros. Game. Try to transform one of those levels into a 3D environment, or just take some of the objects and types of platforming that you would use in a game like 3D World and put it in a small section of this, for example. It's kind of hard to describe the individual aspects to this being built up, but I'm sure some of you get what I mean here, and that has to be done in order to create a better Mushroom Kingdom. Staying on the subject of kingdoms, moving on to the next one, I'd like some more creative new kingdoms, and I have no doubt about this one, but I was kind of surprised that there was no spooky themed kingdom in Mario Odyssey, considering the prevalence of ghost houses within the main series titles all the time, and even previous sandbox-styled Mario games like Mario 64 had Big Boo's Haunt. So it kind of surprised me that this wasn't included. Many people consider Bonneton to be the spooky kingdom, but I can't really buy that. It's the starting kingdom of the game. It isn't really too scary. The music doesn't really set that much of a tone for it either. It just kind of feels like more of a tragic kingdom than a spooky one, considering all the damage, and that's really where the conflict starts within the game, and you have your first boss fight there and all that. I have no doubt that Nintendo is going to come through and deliver a wide array of creative new kingdom ideas that many of us would have never even dreamed of. That's why I love Nintendo, because they come out of left field with a lot of things. Who would have expected the Luncheon Kingdom to come in and actually really work like it did? Next, I'd like some familiar villains to return, such as the Koopalings and Bowser Jr. I really enjoyed the Broodals in Mario Odyssey, but I think it's time to shake things up a little bit. And if they don't want to include brand new villains within this game, I know the perfect way to go and get some great villains that people will enjoy seeing. Go to the Koopalings. They all are similar, but have some different aspects about them that make them unique for each of their fights. And Bowser Jr., he's mainly been put in his car for fights in newer Mario games, and I think that could be a great way to battle him as well. Maybe you'll get your own car that you could possess with Cappy or something like that. Just capture that and go up against him. It would be a very fun fight. Going along with these familiar villains, why don't you take some villains from older Mario games, such as King Bob-omb, for instance, and implement him into a boss fight. Now, if one of the previous features that I was talking about comes true with kingdoms based on ones from other games, which would probably lead to Bob-omb Battlefield being implemented, then this would be done anyways, but it would be nice to see. The next thing, and it's kind of specific, and you wouldn't really see too many people talking about something like this because it's a weird little nitpick that I have with the game. I'd like more regionally themed enemy inclusion, and this is something that Super Mario 3D World and 3D Land really get right, and I think Odyssey doesn't shine as much in this department. As somebody who's really into Mario enemies, and you can see that based on the videos that I've made in the past about them, there are so many on the channel, and I have more cooking to come up soon, but I enjoy seeing specific enemies themed based on their areas, and Mario Odyssey, while it does do that for some departments, it only really does it when it has to. Like in a water-themed kingdom, you'll have lots of water enemies. But for the Snow Kingdom, for example, you've only got a couple of enemies in there that are really based on the snow. Looking at the list based on the Super Mario Wiki for the Snow Kingdom, you have Snow Cheep Cheeps, or just a different color of Cheep Cheep. The Typhoos aren't really winter enemies, considering that they were included in air levels within Mario games before Odyssey predominantly. You got the Bite Frosts, and that's about it for winter-themed enemies. Why don't you get things like the Snow Pokey back from 3D World, or the Chill Bullies from Mario 64. Snow Spikes are other really good enemies that you could implement in this game. There's so many great winter enemies that you could include in this kingdom that is based on snow. I love the Snow Kingdom in Mario Odyssey, and it's one of my favorite ones within the game. There's so many unique missions to go through, and I do like the enemy selection, but the enemy selection isn't winter themed as much as I would like when I'm going through a winter themed kingdom in the game. This is just a small thing that I think they should fix for the next one, a great new feature that they should add. And the last thing that I'd really like to see in Mario Odyssey, the 10th feature on this list, is a minigame mode, akin to the one in Mario 64 DS and a couple other Mario titles on the DS. These minigames are such a fun distraction from the main gameplay, and in Mario Odyssey, there are these small missions that you could do, which are basically like minigames that you would see in this kind of mode, obviously in a 3D environment. And I would really like for this minigame mode, after you experience the mission within the main game, you can then go back to the minigame mode and just play them at your free will. These minigames wouldn't really be like the Mario Party ones, as they're not really local multiplayer focused, but I could definitely see some of them working online. Ones where it's really beneficial to have a single screen experience for it, so it'd be better to experience it online. And like some of the minigames that are within Mario Odyssey, you could probably post your scores online and see how you did compared to some of the best people in the world. The Koopa freerunning was so much fun within Mario Odyssey, and I'm glad that you could experience it a couple of times within the Lost Kingdom, but I'd like to have this mode which is completely dedicated to games like this, fun little distractions from the main gameplay, because sometimes you don't really want to continue with your main adventure, but you want to do something else within the game. You get that feeling sometimes, so it'd be fun to just go into this section within the game, which Mario 64 DS had, and it really worked out well for that, and just play some mini games at your free will. Again, I'd really like to know what kind of features you'd like to be implemented into a sequel to Mario Odyssey, and how likely you think it is to come out. Remember to subscribe and click the bell icon so that you don't miss any new Nintendo uploads, and check out some of the previous Mario Odyssey videos that I mentioned in this one that I think you'll really enjoy. They're linked on the screen for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.